Hello chess family, it's me National Master Jesse James, and today we're going to be taking a look at another game from Morphy's rules. We're going over rule number 13, avoid double isolated and backwards pawns. Now this is a very important rule as it's going to go over the 3 different types of pawn weaknesses. And why is it important to know that? Well, a lot of times in people's games they'll tell me, I don't know what to do here, I can't develop a plan. Well, whenever you know your opponent's weaknesses, particularly the pawns, it's very easy because now you can actually set up an attack against those. Also, identifying a weakness is going to help you just understand the game a lot more because, well, what's more better than knowing your opponent's weaknesses, right? So let's take a look in this game where Morphy is able to give his opponent these weaknesses twice in the game, all 3 of them at the same time, and how he takes advantage of them. Here we go. Morphy's going to be playing the white pieces against Morphy's going to be playing the white pieces against John Schulten. Here we go. E4, E5, knight f3, knight c6. Bishop b5, a very rare occasion where we actually get to see Morphy play the Ruy Lopez. Alright. Bishop c5 gets played. Already a mistake. Here white's going to get a huge advantage. A lot of times whenever bishop c5 is played in these games, one of the best things that we can do is play the pawn to d4. Wait a second, d4? Don't they just take? Yes, this is true. We got to prepare it just correctly. Here we're going to go pawn c3 and d4. So if you're playing your games in Italian or in a Ruy Lopez, a good idea anytime you see them play bishop c5, c3, d4 plans are going to be very good. Now this is good because we're going to get 2 pawns in the center and we're going to get a free tempo or an attack against the bishop. So Morphy does just that. Here we go, pawn c3. Knight ge7 was played. Another very bad move here for black. Why is this so bad? Well, at least the knight to f6 would have controlled the center with more squares and attacked this undefended pawn. Well, knight ge7 controls less squares, and again, just doesn't do anything to stop what Morphy's about to do to him. Now here we can play d4 right away. Morphy didn't want to deal with anything with the pawn takes, checking ideas, which are pretty decent, although, again, white just holds the advantage. So he just plays simple chess and goes ahead and castles and castles. We need a castle anyways, so by doing this, we're going to get out of those bishop b4 variations. So after castles and castles, now the time is perfect. Let's do it. Pawn d4. What's better than 1 pawn in the center? That's 2 pawns. Here we have e4 and d4. The bishop moves back to b6. And here white just has a huge advantage. Well, let's take a look. How do things go out of the opening? Our king is safe. We have 2 pieces out and 2 pawns in the center. Alright, here we go. Black has his king castled. Boasts 3 pieces out, but no pawn in the center. So, what do we do now? We have a big advantage here. Do we just continue with simple moves like knight c3, rook e1, just bring the pieces up? You definitely can do that, and it will give you a decent game. But here, well, one of the reasons why we control the center is to push back our opponent's pieces. Here we have a very strong move that will guarantee us the advantage. Hopefully you're looking at either playing d5 or e5. Which one do you think is best? Well, hopefully you got it right here. Here the move Morphy plays is d5 here. Now this is a good move because remember, look for those forced moves. Checks, captures, and threats. This is a threat. We're attacking the knight. Now the knight needs to move back and we're going to get some free tempos with moving forward. Before we do that, I do want to tell you guys what's wrong with e5 here. This also controls the center. It doesn't attack a piece, but it's still there. The reason why this is bad is because black has 2 very good moves. Now black has no presence in the center right now, but in one move he could do that. He can simply play d6. Now this is a very strong move because, well, I'm going to get rid of one of your pawns in the center. Okay, even d5 is a strong move here. You can see that he has really good light square control, and you never really want to en passant here, as after queen takes d6, this pawn on d4 now has become a target, and it's not going to get any better here for white. Oof, black is already in a good position. So here, that's why we chose the move to play pawn d5, and this knight is marooned. This knight really has nowhere good to go. We can't go to e5. There's a knight right there. b4 you could play, but you'll just get kicked. And, well, the best place is knight to b8. Let's see. Quick question. Is knight e5 okay? Of course not. A knight on the rim is grim. How do you take advantage of this, though? Hopefully you see the best move. For those that said bishop d2, not bad. Although that's just an even exchange. b4, though, wins on the spot, as well. Again, the knight is just trapped, so we're going to be winning this next move, regardless. Okay, so the best move here for black was to go ahead and play knight back to b8. And let's just go to continue here. What do we do now? Lots of good moves here. Again, knight c3 is good. Bishop out to f4, g5 is good. Rook e1's good. Don't bring your queen out right now. There's really no good square for her. We need to see how black develops before we bring this queen out. So what do we do here? Well, here with this one move, we're going to be creating the 3 different types of pawn weaknesses. Pretty crazy that we could do this in one move. But also I want to talk to you 1 second and say, if you want to play the best move here, you have to do what's called prophylactic thinking. What's prophylactic thinking? Prophylactic thinking is simply understanding what your opponent wants. Now you can either stop them or let them do the idea if you think it's bad. But here, there's definitely a move that black wants to play. If you're playing black here, what would you want to play? Well, if I'm playing black here, there's only one move that I'm thinking about. It's my pawn move to d6. This is very important for black because, well, I want to get my bishop out, and I also want to get my knight out. So d6 is going to be really good for us. Well, we know that now, so Morphy's going to stop this. What do you do? Someone says e5. E5, although it does control d6, did not stop it. d6 gets played anyways. He didn't do anything. Okay, so what do? Here we go. Let's create those 3 different types of pawn weaknesses. Pawn to d6. Avoid double, isolate, and backwards pawns. Here, after d6, well, you have to take. Oh, there's nothing you can do, right? I mean, okay, let's just say you move the knight somewhere to c6. Now, e5, oof. You might as well put the coffin on this king because he's not going to be getting out of this alive. Notice here, after e5, the bishop can't get out because the d-pawn can't get out. And then when the bishop can't get out, the rook can't get out. Look at these knights over here. They're just stumbling all over each other. The best piece on the board for black definitely is the bishop, as this queen can't even really move out into the game, as we control all the squares. So, of course, we're not going to go into this variation. Black has to take here. And now we get those 3 weaknesses, the double, isolate, and backwards pawns. Let's take a look at them and identify what these weaknesses are. Well, these are called double pawns. What are double pawns? Pawns that are stacked up on top of each other. Typically, they're very hard to defend, and they're getting in the way of each other. Typically, you'll win one, and then you'll win the next one. All right, let's take a look at the next idea, which is the isolated pawn. What's an isolated pawn in chess? An isolated pawn is a pawn that has no pawn next to it. So these are double and isolated pawns. These guys are going to be bad because, well, you have to be defending them constantly with a big piece. And your big pieces typically want to be attacking your opponent. Okay, what's the last one? A backwards pawn. What's a backwards pawn in chess? It's simple. It's a pawn that can't be moved forward without being captured. And here we have 2 backwards pawns. Once this pawn moves forward, we can just take it. And again, if this one tries to move forward again, we can put pressure on it. So, we could take the pawn back right away, but this would not be the best because, again, black wants to get the pawn out so we can play bishop to bring the bishop out. So if you play queen takes d6 here, here black goes bishop c7, your queen moves, and now I can play d5. And equality is already there. Okay, so what do? Well, let's just keep developing pieces and not let them move these pawns out the way. These isolated pawns are going to be perfect for us. Double isolated pawns. Here we go. Bishop f4 was played. Knight c3 was also a very good move in that position, but of course, since d6 is the weakness, bishop out is going to put pressure on that pawn right away. And if you could leave your bishop here, it's going to be very good for you because, again, the bishop, if the pawn can't get out, the bishop can't get out. If the bishop can't get out, the rook can't get out. Almost half of your queenside army is already unable to move. All right, let's keep moving forward. Bishop to c7. What's the next move here? Let's keep developing pieces. Knight c3, of course. Pawn a6. All right. We're going to have to move this bishop to a good diagonal. Where's the best one for it? Of course, it's the a2 to g8 diagonal. So bishop goes to c4, b5, and now we can rest on bishop to b3. We don't have to worry about being attacked, at least for a few more moves. Bishop b7 gets played. All right. What's the next piece we want to move? Here, the next piece we want to move is our queen. We want to move our queen so we can do what's called connecting the rooks. What's the best move here for the queen to move to then? To be honest, you could play something like queen d2, e2. These are all decent moves, but the best way to play was by Morphy. Here, he's not going to lose any tempos at all. If you go d2, later on, when you take, they can take back, so you have to move your queen twice. So, he does this correctly. Bishop takes, black takes, and then queen takes. Again, if you had played your queen to d2 here, you would have just wasted a move because the queen's going to go to d6 anyways. All right, so the queen's on d6, and now we've got rid of one of those pawns, and also now we have the isolated pawn, isolated and backwards. I'm not sure if there's anything worse in chess games that I have than attacking these guys. All right, this pawn is in the way. What do we do now? Black goes ahead and plays pawn h6. Be careful about playing these kind of weird pawn moves on the side. Yes, it does stop your pawns from moving forward, and sometimes this is the right thing to do, but here it's just a waste of time. All right, let's keep developing. Well, the next pieces we want to move, it's our rooks. And where do our rooks belong? Well, there's 3 good squares for them, so if you're thinking about any one of these squares, you're definitely doing well. Just make sure that you don't double your pieces so they can't move. What I mean by that, if you put it over here to e1, then this other rook cannot get out, right? They're stacked on top of each other, so they can't be getting out. So just think about where you want to place your rook before you do it. So this rook would either be going to e1 or d1, never to c1, because then the c rook can never get out. If I'm playing this position, I definitely would put my rook to d1 and the other one to e1. So what does Morphy play here? Of course, the most precise move. d7 is the biggest weakness in the position. It's a isolated backwards pawn. Rook to d1 gets played. Black plays knight c8, attacking your queen. And now a nice move. d7 is one of the pawn weaknesses, but there's actually going to be a new one. Where's the new pawn weakness? This one's kind of hard to spot. But believe it or not, the f7 pawn is going to be the new weakness here. We already have one piece attacking it, so we're going to bring another one in, the queen. Where do you play it to? Queen f4 gets played, a very nice square. Still kind of in the center here, and also putting pressure on f7 pawn. Black plays knight to b6. Let's keep moving forward and keep attacking the weaknesses. Remember, the 2 weaknesses here is d7 and f7. How can we put pressure on both with the same piece? Beautiful chess. Knight to e5 here. Look at this move. Black is just slowly getting attacked here, and all his pawns are just in the way. Okay, so what do we do now? There's no good way to defend the pawn. No good way. You have to lose. You have to lose some material here, unfortunately. And here, Black plays the move that, well, I definitely don't like. Queen to f6. Ugh. Why can't we play something like Queen e7 here? Hopefully, you see the idea. White to move. What do you play here to win the exchange? You get to win the rook here. Hopefully you found it. It's knight to g6. Look at that beautiful move. Here the pawn cannot take because the bishop is pinning it. So we just have a simple fork here, attacking the queen and the rook. And there's no good way to defend this pawn. For instance, if you don't defend it, and let's just say you play knight c6, oof, these variations get bad. Bishop takes on f7. If you take, well then, queen just takes back and we're up an extra pawn and the exchange. Let's see, what else is happening here? After bishop takes f7 check, king h8, knight g6 check is already very strong, winning the exchange again. Oh gosh, what else can we play? King h8? After bishop takes f7, king h8? No. King h7? Here you walk into the same thing. Oof. In fact, there's a maiden forward now. Queen f5 check, king h8, knight g6 check, king h7, double check, king h8, deadly kiss, checkmate. Oof. So, Black, whether he wants to or not, has to play this terrible move, queen to f6. And now, again, we're going to give our opponent those 3 different types of pawn weaknesses. Avoid double isolated and backwards pawns. Here we go. Queen takes f6, pawn takes, doubled, can't be moved forward without being captured, and isolated because there's no pawn next to it. Let's move the knight and make a threat. Knight goes to g4 here. The rest of this game, I'll just finish it up. It's not too important, so we're going to run through it kind of fast. But here, again, just understand, do not give yourself these bad pawn structures. Look at these pawns. Now, good pawns look like this. They're pawns in the center, and then the pawns are all at home. Remember, once pawns move forward, they cannot move back. Knight g4 is forking these pawns. Black played king to g7, saying, I'll just defend it. Here we go, tactics time. Knight takes on f6. Why shouldn't the king take back? Well, if the king takes, we get to play rook d6 check, attacking both the knight, or the king and the knight here. Black played bishop to c6, defending his biggest weakness, the backwards d7 pawn. Well, this knight's looking beautiful here. There's no reason to move it. Pawn to e5, a beautiful move. Not only does this pawn defend the knight, but it's making this another backwards pawn because anytime it gets pushed forward now, you can also think about doing en passant. Okay, a5 is getting played. Black is trying to create some queenside stuff over here, but to no avail. It's not going to work out too much. Here, Morphy just brings in reinforcements. Rook d3, a very strong move. What does this move do? Well, we need to get the other rook into the game, so the idea might be to double up rooks to concentrate on this biggest weakness. Again, whenever your opponent has weaknesses, don't just say it's a weakness and then just keep playing your game. Know it's a weakness and attack it. It's not a weakness if you do not attack it. So here, doubling up rooks is good. And also, he has Capablanca's rook, which he's going to slide on top of the pawns so he can maybe attack the king. Rook h8 was played. Now, this is one of those moves that's pretty much forced. Again, if you're not paying attention, knight a6, uh-oh. Rook g3 check, and now your king is marooned to the corner. And you have to be very careful here because there's a lot of different checkmate patterns in the air. Okay, so rook h8 was played. Knight to d5. Here, Morphy's just following the rule. Trade as many pieces as possible whenever you're up in material. Knight c4 is played. Let's make some trades. Bishop takes, pawn takes. Rook to g3 check. King goes to f8. Let's get the next piece into the game. And here, a very cunning maneuver by Morphy. Knight to b6, attacking the rook and the pawn. Rook went to a7. Now, you could snack attack on this pawn, but here Morphy again finds a very nice idea. Rook to d1, concentrating on d7. Bishop b5, saying, I don't want to lose the pawn. And Morphy uses that to his advantage. Rook to d4. It looks like Morphy's trying to attack the pawn on c4, but the real idea will become apparent soon. Black's like, well, you're attacking the pawn, I can just defend it, rook c7. And now the real idea comes, rook d to g4. Here Morphy doubles up his rook on the g file. And yeah, this game is just over now. Here Black resigns. Why does he resign? All variations is just more loss of material. This king can't even run to e7 for safety. As well, knight to d5 check will just win the exchange again. Again, if you're just not paying attention, you just want to try and develop your pieces. Here we go, rook g8 check, and you can't even take back. If you take, you'll get mated. So you're just losing pieces left and right. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed this game, learning about the three different types of pawn weaknesses. Remember, avoid double, isolated, and backwards pawn. I'll see you in the next video.